Hello and welcome to Blockchain Gaming World with me, John Jordan. So I'm going to go through some numbers with Digidaigaku, which I've done quite a lot of videos of and probably do some more of. I'll try and make it as simplified as possible so people can get the idea of the flow. It is quite a complicated project in terms of the NFTs, so just bear that in mind. But I try and be as simple as possible. So what I'm looking at here really is the percentage conversion rates from different assets. So Digidaigaku started off with these Genesis assets. So they were 2022. Although here it says 2021. We'll discuss that a little bit. But anyway, 2022 of these anime characters. And they were given away for free as a free mint. Now you can see the floor is 3.5, or the best offer is 3.3. So these are, still, they've been much higher than that. They've been up to over 15 ETH at certain points. Obviously, the NFT market is at the moment, very much in a bear market. So that's also, we'll talk about that a little bit in how that's been reflected. So they actually launched August 2022, so quite a long time ago now. But during that time, a whole bunch of other assets have been created. So quite a lot of NFTs have been created on the back of this. And there's also some assets have been, so a lot of assets have been airdropped to people or have been claimed from people who got in early to that extent. But then over time, they've been opening up to other people who weren't involved in these sort of early times. So it's interesting. That's really what I'm looking at in this video. So when you started out, if you had one of these Genesis characters, you were airdropped a spirit character. So the spirit character looked like this. So spirit character is just like a sort of, had the same art style, the same sort of art as the Genesis ones, but they were spirits. They had this sort of, the face was different. They were looked like spirits, this sort of blue face. So the first option you had when you had one of these spirits airdropped into your wallet was you could just keep it. So you can see some of these people here have just kept these spirits here, and they haven't done anything with them. They're trying to sell them. But the first sort of option you could do was go to the Digidaigaku website, and you could craft a hero. So I think this quest is still open. So if you had a Genesis character and a spirit character, you could basically do this quest, and what would happen would be the Genesis NFT would stay the same. The spirit NFT, this one here, would be burnt, so that would disappear, and you would get a hero character. The hero characters obviously look very different. There is a whole bunch of game theory. There are actually 4 different versions of these. So this bloodline thing going on here, and depending on, I won't go into all sort of detail, but exactly dependent on what Genesis character and what spirit character you burnt together, you could get different options around this. So you could just burn, if you just had a spirit character, you could burn it directly and get a hero. Or you could burn, if you burnt your exact Genesis character with your exact spirit that you were given, you get a royal one. You can see here most people did that and got a royal one. So ironically, the sort of thing that's getting you the most powerful NFT is actually the most common NFT, because these other ones, which don't really have so much, you're not spending so much sort of resource to get them, are actually much smaller. So looking at my graph here, my spreadsheet here, so we can see here, the first decision you had was you had a spirit character, and you could burn your spirit to get a hero character. So we can see here, there were 2022 of these, 1,922 have been transformed. So that's how many heroes have been created. 100 of the spirits are still available, haven't been burnt. So basically a 95% pickup rate. So there's a 95% sort of adoption rate of this situation here. So that's pretty high. I mean, obviously some people lose their keys to their wallets, and some people just not interested in doing it. There's a small gas fee involved in doing this. So but you can sort of get an idea. Most 95%, I think, is a pretty high sort of take up rate. So that was the first thing that sort of happened, a long time ago now. Next thing that happened, where it gets slightly more complicated, is you had these spirits, dark spirits, I should say. So if you had a Genesis NFT, you got a dark spirit. Obviously, previously we'd had these sort of, they weren't called light spirits, but these are just the spirits. But now we had dark spirits, and also we had dark hero spirits. So if you had one of these hero characters, you got a dark hero spirit. In fact, you got 2 of each. So this was sort of interesting in the sense that this was the first time where we went from sort of 2000-ish, 2000-ish of the Genesis, and sort of a maximum 2000-ish of the heroes, and then we went up to 4,000 of these dark hero spirits, and 4,000 of these dark spirits. So that was sort of interesting. But these, again, you can see some people have sort of not done anything with these and just sort of kept them, and some people are trying to sell them. And if we go back here, what was the point of the spirit? So if you had a dark spirit or a dark hero spirit, you could again go on this quest, and you could use them to create potions. Again, different sorts of potions. There were just ordinary villain potions and super villain potions, depending on exactly which of these dark spirits you sort of burnt together. And we can start to see here again. I've taken these figures. I've taken from things like OpenSea and Blur, the marketplace, which basically look to see how many of the assets there are out there and how many are sort of live now. And you sort of have to move between the two. So these things don't really. Some of these numbers are maybe a little bit off. And obviously, what's happening is you're taking. It's very hard for. It's not hard, but you have to be careful looking at how many of these things ever existed, if some of them are being burnt, and how many are left, and all this sort of stuff. So there's, I would say these are not, accurate to the nth degree. But we can see roughly here for the second decision, people who were taking their dark spirit NFTs and making potions from them, and people who were taking their dark hero spirits and making potions of them. Roughly, we've gone from 2,000 here to about sort of 4,000 here. So say some of the numbers here are probably a little bit off, but you can see it again, it dropped down a bit, but still around. So 95% for the first sort of decision, then maybe like 90%-ish, we could say, for the sort of second decision to get these potions. So what were the potions for? Well, the potions were, let's see, the potions were going to be what you use to make your villains. But before we get to the potions and the villains, the next thing was the villains themselves. So these were unmasked villains. So let's go back here. So we have our villains. So this was as I said, we went from like 2,000 Genesis to 4,000 NFTs for these dark spirit ones, and then for the villains we went up. Effectively, we could think of this as doubling again. It was sort of more than that actually. But what happened was, if people had Genesis and heroes and potions, they got some unmasked heroes. And there was also a claim here. So here was the claim for masked villains. So as I say, some people with existing assets got some of these. They had to claim them, but they could claim these, just pay the gas fee. And then some people who didn't previously have any assets in Digidaigaku also got the option to claim some of these. This is the first time the project was expanded from people who previously owned those assets. Now you can see here the claims here for this set, for the villains and the dragon essences, are now closed. So we know there's no more of these NFTs are being produced. So we have here sort of how many of these masked villains were sort of created, how many have been transformed into villains, and how many have not been transformed. And as probably not surprisingly, the sort of the transformation rate is down to about sort of 70%. Again, with these sort of things, you can still unmask your villain. So the claims are time related. The quests to transform things at the moment, at least, are not being time locked. So these are all still open. So people could go onto marketplaces and buy NFTs and still do these sort of things. And with the villains, what you could do is you could either just take a villain and just unmask it on its own to get like an entry level villain, or you could combine it with some of these potions and get different sorts of villains. Super villains were the sort of most obvious one. And to do that, you need a supervillain potion. So you can sort of see here that looking at how many supervillain potions were there, and how many of those were used to create supervillains. So again, something here which to get a supervillain potion, you were probably part of this initial sort of set of people, probably crypto savvy, quite committed to the project. So again, like a 95%. So we can roughly see all these options here are roughly, I would say, without saying all these figures are exactly the same, but they roughly, you have the same sort of level of take up. A lot of people doing this. As soon as we start adding in people who are sort of not part of this, admittedly very small collection, so we're only going there from 2,000 to whatever we're going to here. It starts to drop off a little bit. So 7% is still fairly high. As I say, these things are still open, so that stuff can still happen. Then the next thing that happened after the villain, so went from Genesis to heroes to villains. That also seems to make sort of sense. And now we went to dragons. So dragons were sort of big in the sort of mythology of Digidaigaku because it was the first time that everything was an airdrop. So if you had these NFTs, if you had any of those other NFTs, the Genesis, heroes, or whatever, you didn't get access to the dragons. Actually, it was dragon eggs, I should say. So 10,000 dragon eggs were produced, and they were airdropped to people. There was a big thing around this, the Super Bowl ad that the Digidaigaku ran, and people were could get these eggs airdropped to them. And then once you had the eggs, you could make baby dragons. So this is the quest here. You basically just take an egg and you reveal a baby dragon. So that's all you do. There's no other potions or anything involved in that, or one-to-one sort of change. So we can see here, 10,000 of these these dragon eggs have been created, but less than half have been transformed to baby dragons. Now, maybe the obvious reason for this is the first time where you have people who are, hard to know how crypto savvy they are. They have to have an Ethereum wallet. And obviously these sort of people maybe not have ETH in that wallet, or may not understand that the dragon egg has to be transformed into baby dragon, or may just not care anymore. But you're talking about 50% here compared to like 95% for these active people up here. Again, we can see the sort of the crypto savvy people. You have this thing called a dragon essence. So we come back here to the claims. So dragon essence is very much like the potions. You could claim them if you had some of the existing assets. So if you had like Genesis assets or heroes or villains, you were claiming these dragon essences. There were 7,000 of these roughly sort of claimed. So again, we could sort of do some math around that, but I didn't really do it. But in terms of actually no, that is So this is the math. Sorry. This is the maximum essences that could have been there, depending on how many of these have been created. And so we had 90% take up of the dragon essences that could have been were claimed. So again, we can say that's broadly similar to sort of what we're seeing up here. A little bit down, you could say, but broadly the case. And maybe some people again have lost access to their keys, or just not interested in this project anymore. So 90% is still pretty good. And then the final bit, or where we are at the moment, is quests. So giant dragons are where we are now. So to do this, you need a baby dragon and you need a dragon essence. And depending on the sort of stats of the baby dragon and the stats of the essence, you get different forms of giant dragons. Now, again, this is only just happened in the last week. So again, it's not surprising that this is what is exactly to be expected, that this is the lowest level. So we can see here we've got 1,500-ish dragons have been created so far. Out of a total, obviously, of the same as the number of essences, about just over 7,000. So that's about 20%. So that will go up over time, I guess, because this has only just come in. But actually, you would expect the majority of the action to be happening in the first sort of certainly couple of weeks. So this is a bit low, and we can sort of broadly see this as this is historic sort of old stuff now that happened last year. But the people who really committed to this and got in early, and obviously they have a financial incentive to do that, I suppose you could argue. The sort of activity here is happening at about 90%. So 90% of the people or the wallets who could be doing this sort of stuff are doing it. So 10% aren't. That's not nothing. But generally pretty committed. As soon as we start letting in, that's wrong. As soon as the sort of community is extended to people who may not be so crypto savvy, may have sort of problems understanding about wallets, may have sort of won these things. Obviously, an airdrop, you have to fill in a claim. If you're just basically filling in a claim, following someone on Twitter and putting your ETH address into a sort of Google form, that's not necessarily sort of strong. Not necessarily a strong incentive for you to then do anything with that. So we see it's like a 50-50 sort of element here of people. 100% of people got these dragon eggs, but only 50% have made baby dragons from them. Again, the other reason is if we look into price here, there's not a lot of reason to do that. At the moment, these things are priced the same. So if you have a dragon egg, why would you transform it to a baby dragon if there's no financial point for you to do that? Because to make a giant dragon, you need a dragon essence. So most of these people here who own dragon eggs haven't got dragon essences, because the whole point of bringing these people in is they're not part of this sort of initial group who are sort of really into the project. I think from a design point of view, the reason to bring in these two different groups is to get the people who are really committed to Digidaigaku, who are getting these essences, and then going to be buying these assets to then create the giant dragons. And have a quick look at price here. So it's a bit confusing. We'll go through some of this sort of stuff. But we can see here, so we have sort of baby dragon eggs here, and this is the price, sort of like $60. Baby dragons, this is the floor price. So it's not actually the bid price, but the lowest price these are being offered for. Again, these are exactly the same. So considering you have to pay a gas fee to turn dragon eggs into baby dragons, why would anyone do that? Why would you buy an egg to turn it into a baby dragon when you can just buy a baby dragon off the floor? And then you can see you need a dragon essence. That's the floor, and that's the. If you didn't have any of these, it would cost you. How much would it cost you? Well, it would actually cost you slightly less to buy these two things to make a baby dragon compared to the floor here, but not by much. So here I'm looking at the sort of is it economically sensible to make any of these assets if you didn't have them and you're just buying them off the floor price? So a giant dragon, the create price is a dragon essence and a baby dragon, or a dragon egg, same thing. So compare the create price to the floor price. Well, potentially there's a $14 profit there, but the gas fee would probably be more than that. So obviously, at the moment, while these prices are the same, there's no one's creating any new giant dragons, because it's easier just to buy the floor rather than sort of buy the materials you need to create them. So this is what the similar thing for the super villains. So if we look at these, if I want to make a super villain, I need a masked villain and I need a super villain potion. And if I just buy a super villain at the floor price, that's actually cheaper. So if I actually made one, I'm going to potentially lose like $100, and that doesn't include the gas price. So obviously at the moment, one of the reasons that stuff like go back to this masked villain percentage. I mean, 70% is not too bad, but the reason it's not higher and why it may go higher is if the pricing around these changes. If it becomes financially, if there's a financial incentive for people to create these because the floor price of the supervillains goes up, then obviously people will start buying these components and creating more supervillains. But if the supervillain price remains lower than that, then if you want a supervillain, just go and buy a supervillain. So it's an interesting sort of similar thing going on here with what they call the big and little villains. These are to create these, to create a little villain, all you need is a masked villain. Then you just pay the gas to convert it. So there's not really, you can see here again, this is sort of, at equilibrium. There's no point creating more little villains. Again, this is one of the reasons why we have so many masked villains still sitting there. There's no reason to do anything with them. Big villains, there's not so many of those, and to create one of those, you need a villain potion and a masked villain, and the floor price is 0.22. So that seems like, you can make $200 to do that. The issue here is, there are very few big villains. So there's only 90 So whether you can actually sell one for this price, it seems pretty unlikely to me. So this is actually twice as expensive as a supervillain, and supervillains have better stats. So the other thing we have to think about a little bit, or predict a little bit about, is these assets are not being created for their own benefit. There's supposedly a game going to be created around these. So we don't quite know, or we don't really know much detail about the game. But the whole point of these assets is they are going to be used in a game, and that will then sort of play into some of the stats that these characters have. So supervillains will obviously be more valuable than villains. We don't really exactly know how, and we can't really put a price on that at the moment. Obviously, the market is putting the price on it at the moment, kind of based on the component parts you need. But say if in a game supervillains were like 10 times more powerful, then obviously there'd be a change in the pricing, I would think. But we don't know what that is at the moment. So you sort of have this sort of situation where it looks like you could be making money creating big villains, but because no one's buying big villains, probably that's not the case. But this is sort of stuff we have to sort of think about when we are sort of looking at these component prices. And as you can see, sort of stuff that I'm interested in doing. So the other thing to point out is heroes and supervillains. So there's different types of these. There's 4 different types of heroes, and 90% of them were these royal ones where you burnt your Genesis character. You burnt exactly the right spirit with the right Genesis, and you got the sort of most valuable or the most sort of high spec character. So 90%, and only 1% were doing the. So there's only 27 of these rogue ones, which were just sort of burning just a random spirit. But actually, that means them, at least in terms of frequency, rarity, they're by far and away much rarer. There's only 1% of the heroes of those type. Similar thing with the super villains. This is more interesting that the sort of the common or garden ones, again, the vast majority of super villains are these second in commands. Third in commands are not as valuable, we would think, in the game. There's only 200, but there's only 200 of them have different. All these ones have different artwork. So the third in commands at the moment are actually twice the floor price of these of the second in command ones, and the chiefs. There's 400 of those, but they're the same price as these ones that have 200. I mean, who knows? And then there's 199 of these boss NFTs, and their floor price is 2 ETH. But there's very little liquidity around these, so it's very hard to judge if any of these prices are correct. The other thing to point out is in terms of overall game theory, the best thing to have done with Digidaigaku would have been to sell off your Genesis at the peak of the market when these were worth that $20,000, something like that. So now they're about 6,000. Still not nothing considering they were a free mint. But in retrospect, the best option would have been to sell out at the peak of the market and then probably just buy in components along the way. You'd have made more money that way. But that's probably not part of the game. And we don't really know. There may be some other stuff to come in which it may be the people who didn't do that would be rewarded. You sort of think there'd be some game theory around that. But the prices of these things have come down enormously over the last 8 months or so. Anyway, I think that's enough about Digidaigaku. I think it's really fascinating, at least to look at these sort of stuff. Maybe not, enormously strong conclusions to be created from these, but one of the good things about blockchain is we can look at these numbers. It's all sort of public what's going on, so we can get an idea of how these communities are developing. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. Please subscribe to the channel. See you next time.